the background to my ideas is the talks of Rabbi Yehuda Cook, the son of Rav Cook. Every month.
Cook.
What?
Rabbi Yehuda Hakaron Cook.
Yeah, every Motzei Shabbat, he used to give a sicha, and that was when he expressed most of his ideas. And so they were recorded and worked over and passed down. So this is something very amazing. So I want to talk around that today again. So so first I want to speak out this idea from the Ramban. The Ramban says a statement. He says, "Siman banim, Maisa avot, siman labanim." The actions of the fathers is a sign for the children. That's what the Ramban said. Statement from the Ramban, as he's describing what we learned from Sefer Bereshit. So he says like this. He says that. Okay, good. He says that that Maisa banim simla avot. You have to look at the actions of of Maisa avot. Sorry, Maisa avot. The actions of the fathers are a sign for the children. So you look what the fathers do. The avot, Avram, Yitzchak, Yakov, and the imahot, and the shvatim. Look at this at the actions of the fathers, and that's going to be a sign for what's going to happen to the children. So we look what happened to the avot. Look at their lives. We look at their their experiences, and then we're going to have an idea what's going to happen, what is happening to us, what's going to happen to us. History repeats itself, we say in English. Okay. Now it's interesting. It's an interesting idea. Why does history repeat itself? What does it mean? What do you see? What does he mean, the Ramban? That Maisa Avot Siman Labanim, that the things that happen by the Avot is a sign for what's going to happen to the children, and what is happening to us. We have this expression, history repeats itself, but why does that happen? Like, is there an explanation? Is it something just mystical, magical, that things repeat themselves? Or is there a reason for that? So I think that it is pretty mystical. We can't understand it fully, but I think that we can have an idea what it means. It means like this, that what people experience, it always seems to be coming at them from without, right? I go through life, this happened to me, I went to that place, I met this person, I had this experience. So life seems to happen from outside in, right? But actually, that's not what's really going on. What's really going on is that the person's personality, the person's character, the person's understanding of things is really what determines what type of life he lives. It really happens from inside out. It really happens that what happens to a person depends much more on who he is than what he meets. Because things sort of come his way depending on his character. So, that everybody has different experiences, and the way they experience life depends on what they see and what they're looking for, and how they respond to it. So that's the essential experience, is what it comes from within. So therefore, that will explain why the idea is that what happens to the ancestors happens to the descendants, because the ancestors are the ones that have a certain character, a certain life view, and that gets passed down to the generations. And then the children, they have a similar attitude, a similar life view, and then what happens is similar things happen to them. You say, "Oh, that's uncanny." The same thing happened to the parents, happened to the children. Why did the same thing happen? Answer is because that's the way life works. So like I said, it's somewhat mysterious, but it's somewhat not, because we experience things the way we see them.
But Harav, won't it be stereotyping?
No, I don't think that's the point.
Okay.
It's just like, this is just a fact. This is a fact of history. Let me explain more. That's not what I'm saying. Explain a little more. Like, let's say a person has a vision about what's important to him, what's meaningful. He has we call him a person with a vision, a sense of mission, sense of purpose. What happens is sort of things shape around that person. Like when you get a person that's really dynamic, a visionary type person, so then a lot of things happen because of him. And the environment molds to that person's vision, Whereas when a person doesn't have a vision, a person doesn't have a bigger vision of things, sense of purpose, So then things happen to him, and things come some, and then things don't, you don't see like things don't come out so nice, and you'll say that things don't come out because there's no vision. It's even worse than that. It's because there's a lack of vision, because there's a distorted vision. So therefore, what comes out reflects that. There's an expression in Nishlei. It says, "Be'ein chazon yifra am, u'shmor Torah ashrehu." When there's a lack of chazon, when there's a lack of a vision, then the people stray. People get lost. Right? But when they keep Torah, then they're fortunate. They have a direction. So lack of the vision is the thing that causes the problems in life. When you have a vision, then things go out, then follow the vision. An example of that is that when later we're coming to Parshah, which Parshah? Vayetze, I think. No, not Vayetze. This is Vayetze. It's Parshah later on. The Parshah starts out. Elo toldot Yakov Yosef. These are the generations of Yakov. Yosef. It starts with Yosef, and then it goes on and talks about other things that happened. So it sounds like the generations of Yakov are Yosef. Why does it say that? It says because everything that happened to Yakov happened to Yosef. There's a complete repeating of history. Yakov was hated by his brother. Yosef was hated by his brothers, and it goes on like this.
Yakov had a dream.
He was pursued. They had a dream. All this kind of stuff. So there's this whole repeating of history by Yosef that happened by Yakov. Why is that? Because Yosef was the most like Yakov. He had the same character. He learned by him. He was the main student. So therefore, because he had a way of seeing life in a similar to a way that Yakov was, therefore what happened to him was the same. So we think events are random. They're not random. They follow after the person's vision or lack of it. So that's why we say that Maisa Avot Sim Labanim. So we look at the Avot, we look at Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, we see what kind of people they were, we see what happened to them, and we are the ones in our generation. Their ideas came down to us. To all of their descendants, they imbibed the character and the attitudes of the Avot, and as a result, what happened to them is what happens to us. Same idea. So Simon, Maisa Avot Sim Labanim. What happened to the Avot is a sign for what's going to happen to the children, and so we have to look at that. We have to study the Avot to understand what's happening to us, what's going to happen to us, what's going on in our life and the life of the Jewish people. So you have to look at the Avot of Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov especially. So I told you last week we spoke about the sets in the Torah. Rabbi Yehuda speaks about this a lot. There's sets. You understand the Torah, they come in pairs. The ideas come in pairs. Mm-hmm. And also in pairs of three sometimes, or other sets. So I started talking about the sets of three. So one set of three is the three Avot. And there's Avram, Yitzchak, and Yakov. And that's a really interesting set of three. What it means is that Avram came into the world, and Avram started to see Hashem in the world. And Avram started to see that Hashem is running the world. And that he even started to get this relationship with Hashem. He became a prophet. And then he went around talking about to the whole world how there's Hashem who runs the world, Hashem Echad, there's one Hashem. And so Avram was the one who had this beginning of this shift of consciousness that the whole human race had, right? That's the beginning of the Jewish people, that you see Hashem behind the world. After that came Yitzchak, and that's the second in the set is Yitzchak. Yitzchak was internalized this vision of Yaakov. It became more internalized. It became more like a flow of understanding and of energy, you could say. In other words, let me put a little more. Avram was a doer. He was like the revolutionary. He saw this big vision, and he went out like putting it out all over the place. He was an amazing person. If you really look at him, he was like a super prime minister almost. He was teaching the family, he was a big teacher, educator. He was teaching all his students. He was being Makar of students, he's bringing them near. He was a wealthy person, a very wealthy person. He was a soldier, he fought, general. He was doing like in the most amazing way all the time. Like you think about a nation, all the things a nation does, Avram was doing all those by himself. You know, he was a doer. He was the one that's seeing the idea and responding to the idea, the vision that he saw in a very proactive way. Yitzchak was a result of that. Yitzchak he was receiver. He was a receiver of the divine flow and wisdom, which came down. Where it's all the time you don't see Yitzchak doing so much. You see him like responding to the divine wisdom, to the divine energy. In other words, Yitzchak, like what is the story with Yitzchak? Like how does he get his shidduch? He goes out to Avram and Eliezer. They set it all up. They find Rivka. Yitzchak goes out to the field, and she shows up. Yitzchak doesn't do anything. It comes his way because he was this big tzaddik. He was in flow, and all the time he goes and plants a field. What happens? It yields 100 times as much as the regular field. Everywhere he goes, even when going to give a bracha, like he has it wrong, he's about to give a bracha to Esav. What happens? The other people arrange it around. Rivka, Yakov, they arrange it around. Then it goes to the right person, to Yaakovino. So in other words, Yitzchak get everything right because he was like this. The Rav calls him a tzaddik nister, and everybody is like looks up to him. They're afraid of him. They say, "We see Hashem is with you. We want your blessings. We want everything." And even Esav wanted his blessings. So he was like the second level of internalization of the wisdom of Avram Avinu. It was internalized. He was in flow. One said, Hirsch, what?
So Yitzchak Avinu was a receiver of divine wisdom flowing from above?
Yeah, that the channel that Avram opened up, that what came down fully into Yitzchak,
Mm-hmm.
So in another sense, you could say he was the ultimate student. Avram was the teacher, and Yitzchak was the student. He plugged into all the wisdom of Avram Avinu. He was born with it to some extent, and then it was just like in flow the rest of his life. Everything was easy for him. You see, Avram had 10 tests, these incredible tests, which he stood in all of them, and he was always doing stuff. And Yitzchak wasn't doing much. You don't see him doing so much. He was just in flow, like automatically, like the channel for the divine.
So Abraham went through 10 tests. What can we learn about these tests?
Well, my point right now is we can learn about them.
Yeah,
Where?
In the Chumash, of course. But
Oh, they're in there, and they're discussed in Pirkei Avot. You list them, yeah, and in the Mepharshim. But my point is that Avram Avinu was the one who was engaging the world with his vision, and then that wisdom that he was connecting to that came down deeper into Yitzchak Avinu. I want to get back to this point in a bit. Yeah.
Yitzchak's kesher with divine wisdom, was that through birthright or through study?
It was both. So the thing about Yitzchak, he was the ultimate student. So in other words, he was born with a father to guide him, but he's the one who like plugged into that in the most amazing way. I said this last week, like a person like Yitzchak probably wanted to be like his father, to run around and do stuff all the time, and be this big leader of the world. But he didn't. Instead, like he sat in the base of Medrash, that's the image you get of Yitzchak. He was like taking it in and internalizing it.
And that changed with Akedah, or the Akedah has nothing to do
That's part of it. That's also exactly, you see that. You see Avram Avinu doing it, being commanded, going to this dark, strange place, which he was nevertheless knew was from Hashem to Shecht Yitzchak. And Yitzchak allowed himself to be tied up. He was the one who let the divine wisdom flow through him. He was the apparently passive one, but that's not actually passivity. So then after that you have Yakov. Right? So the question is like, so then Yaakov is considered, he's called the Bechira Avot, the chosen of the Avot. In other words, like the perfection of this threesome, set of three. It perfects itself in the third level. 3 is always a perfecting number. Like that's what Hegel talked about. There's what you call it? There's a thesis and an antithesis. There's a hypothesis, an antithesis, and a resolution. Synthesis. Very good. Yeah. And there's sets of 3s. When you go through 3s, then you come to like the perfection in the third. So it's all like that. All you can see that all over the place. So that was Yaakov Avinu. But the question, what was the greatness of Yaakov? In a certain sense, it looks like Avram and Yitzchak wrapped everything up. In other words, there was this great Rebbe, there's this great student, and he internalized it all the way. And so what else was there to do? What's the next step? You could have other students, but that's not what it was. It was something bigger than before. So what's the next step after like these 2 levels of Avram and Yitzchak? What is Yaakov going to be exactly?
A nation.
A nation. Very good. Well, How'd you get that? That's good.
Machon Meir.
Okay, Machon Meir, right? Very good. So that's what Rabbi Yehuda says. He says two things actually. He says that Yakov was the nation, exactly. That nation was a family, was a nation. First it was a family, and that's what became the nation. So taking things from the private level into the group level, that's how it gets to its perfection. That's a higher level, much higher level when it's on the group level. There's also another thing I'll talk about this a little more also. Don't have so much time, do my best. He says two things, Rabbi Yehuda, about Yakov. One thing he says is that he went from the individual to the group, so that's really, really big. And that's like the full perfection when it gets into a whole group. And the truth is, I want to say that's you see that it happens naturally when you have this perfect relationship of the Rebbe and the student. You have this great Rebbe, and you have this great student to receive it and bring it down, And then what happens after that, the ideas become so clear and so worked out that many people could follow that. It goes down throughout history, this great wisdom. Once you have a Rebbe and a Talmud, then you have it coming out into the many. You see that in many cases. You see, for example, a lot of great people, they work like this. I'll give you an example. Let's say the Arizal, the Ariya Kodesh. So he had a Talmud. His name was Reb Chaim Vital. He came to Tzvi, Eretz Yisrael, received from for 2 years, and then the Torah of the Ari became gigantic, and the Reb Chaim Vital wrote it out, and it's now for generations everybody's plugging into the Torah of the Ari. Another example, let's say the Baal Shem Tov in his Talmud, the Maggid. The Baal Shem Tov broke new ground, and the Maggid, brought it in, and then expanded into Chassidut. Or you'd say the Vilna Gaon. Vilna Gaon also brought in a whole new way of understanding Torah and a whole new breadth and insight. And then his Talmud was Ramban Veloshin. He brought it down, and from then on, you have the Yeshiva movement, which we're part of, all because of this combination of the Rebbe and the Talmud. Out of that comes refined, clear wisdom, which the many, the group, can receive as a group. It goes beyond the individual after you have this Rebbe Talmud relationship. And then you have also in modern times, you have Rav Kook and you have Rabbi Yehuda, which we're talking about right now. You have Rav Kook talking, explaining, writing, guiding, and you have Rabbi Yehuda totally nullifying himself, just like Yitzchak, to Rav Kook. Very unusual, like his son, to be able to do that. And as a result, like it came down to all the students of Rav Kook, all of his writings, all of his ideas. I mean, to some extent, came lower into the world, so it becomes the property of the many. So now we have whole communities and shivas and all these following the ideas of Rav Kook, which Rabbi Yehuda was the one to bring down. So that's how it works. So that's the set of three from Avram, Yitzchak to Yakov. Avram is the doer, is the innovator. Yitzchak is the receiver and the refiner. They're bringing it inside, like the channel, to bring it down. And then Yaakov Avinu is the one that makes it public, makes it into that. Now it's transferred into the whole family, the nation, the world. I just want to say something else about this very interesting thing about Yakov and Yitzchak and Avram and Yitzchak. You see a pretty interesting thing here that is describing what I just said a little bit. It says, the pasuk of Yer Lav Hashem Yomer Al Tereb Mitzrayim Mishkon Ba'aretz Asher Amar Lecha. Right, Parshah told it says like this, that there was a famine in Eretz Yisrael when Yitzchak was there, and he was thinking of going now down to Egypt or somewhere out of Eretz Yisrael to make a living. And the Shem said, no, you're not going out of Eretz Yisrael. Avram went out. Hashem was okay with that. But Yitzchak, no, you have to stay in Eretz Yisrael. Because Yitzchak was on a higher level. Yitzchak was totally Kodesh. He shouldn't leave Eretz Yisrael. Avram was okay. So you see, Yitzchak was more holy, more lofty than Avram Avinu in many ways. But in the end, it says, listen to this, the end of the same pasuk, it says, Hashem is talking to Yitzchak, I'm going to multiply your seeds like the stars of the sky. I'm going to give you all these lands to your descendants. And they will bless through you all the nations of the land. Because Avraham heard my voice. Avraham heard my voice and my mitzvahs and my Torahs. So he doesn't give credit to Yitzchak, Hashem. Hashem says, I'm going to give you all these brachas and all these lands, and all the nations are going to be blessed through you because of Avraham. So on the one hand, it starts out saying the Yitzchak is more holy. He can't leave Eretz Yisrael. On the other hand, all the blessings that are come to the descendants of Yitzchak are going to come because of Avraham. So there you see the Rebbe-Talmud relationship. It all gets attributed to the Rebbe because the Rebbe is the one who brought out all the Kedushim, all the new insights. The Talmud received them and internalized them. So and therefore he can go to a higher level in some ways, but it all goes back to the source. It all goes back to Avram Avinu, because the Talmud is a channel for the Rebbe. So it's a team, it's very, very interesting. So, but out of that comes all future generations can receive that wisdom from the Talmud Rebbe relationship. Yeah.
The land of Abimelech is considered as part of Eretz Israel.
Right. So that's why it didn't go out of Eretz Yisrael. Exactly. Very good. I want to tell you interesting also from Reb Tzadok Cohen on this subject. One of the great Rebbes, Hasidic Rebbes. So he said also sets of threes, which plug into the ones we just said. This is a very beautiful form. He said that there's the three books of Shlomo Melech. Shlomo Melech were three books. The first book is Shir Hashem, the Song of Songs. The second book is Mishlei, the Proverbs. Third book is Kohelet, Ecclesiastes. So he says, what's the significance of the three books? He says, Shir Hashem wrote when he was young, Mishlei when he was middle-aged, and Kohelet when he was old. So he says, that means like this, that Shir Hashem, it's all about love. It's all about desire and love. It's about the relationship between Hashem and the Jewish people. It's all about the strong feeling and desire that we have to get close to Hashem. So it's youthful. In youth, you have strong desire. And now middle age, it's Proverbs. It's amazing wisdom of Shlomo Melech. So it's wisdom. In middle age, after you get over the stage of youth, which is mostly about desire and love, then you get to the level of wisdom. You start to clarify things and become more disciplined to get clear about your desires and where to put them, where not to put them, how to discipline yourself, how to see the truth much more. The older you get more clear-minded. One of the differences between youth and old age is that the older you get, the more you realize what you don't know, which is the key to understanding, actually. So middle age is wisdom. Yeah.
Yeah, one time I remember I was talking to this lady that owned a small restaurant near the school I used to go to, and she said how wisdom is wasted on the elderly.
On the young.
Because
on the young.
Oh.
That's the expression.
Oh.
Wisdom is wasted on the young. Not wisdom. Not wisdom. Youth is wasted on the young.
Yeah.
Oh, he said wisdom is wasted on the elderly
because they already went
see.
through life, and that wisdom would be more necessary for
young people. Okay, it's not wasted. It's just late. Not here.
Yeah.
That's true also. So okay. So then what's old age? This is very interesting. Old age. So Rabbi Tzadok says old age is simcha, happiness. So you look at Sefer Kohelet. It's all about seeing the vanity of this world. Kohelet, Ecclesiastes. It's about seeing that all the things that people think are so important aren't important, and the bottom line is fearing Hashem. So Tzadok says that's simcha, happiness. So the three stages of life. This is also a set of three: our desire, wisdom, and happiness. But it's interesting. He puts happiness. So parallel to that, those three things, this is also Tzadok, are, let's say, the three Yomim Tovim: Pesach, Shavuot,
the pilgrimage days.
Yeah, the Shosh Regalim, yes. The three festivals. The first one is Pesach, second one is Shavuot, the third one is Sukkot. Pesach is all about love, about going out of Egypt, about faith and love. That's youth. That's what we get in our youth. Shavuot is about receiving the Torah. That's wisdom. And then Sukkot is about happiness. It's about going out of your house, feeling that you don't need all the things you thought you need, and having the happiness of being close to Hashem. And the further example, all this is Reb Tzadok, is the three avot. It's all based on the three avot. All these things come out of the three avot. Avraham, that's youth, that's originality, that's love, that's faith. Then afterwards comes Yitzchak, that's wisdom, that's internalization, that's receiving of the Torah, that's Shavuot. And then you have Yakov Avinu, which is, so according to Reb Tzadok, that is simcha, a person who's already has this great clarity, and he's not confused by the world anymore. So therefore he's very happy with the truth of reality. That's what Tzadok says. But what we said, what Yehuda said, and this is very interesting, that Reb Tzadok stressed Yakov being simcha, happiness. But Reb Yehuda said that Yakov is the family and the nation. That's interesting. Why did that happen? Because once you had Eretz Yisrael, it seems to me, like once you had a Medina's Yisrael again, and you had the Jewish nation coming back from all four corners of the world and having a nation again, so it's easier to talk about the group. You see what it is again. While we were in Galut, while we were in Poland, where Tzadok was, so they didn't talk about the group as much. It wasn't as clear. It became hidden in the Galut. The people were totally dispersed and scattered. And so therefore Reb Tzadok said Simcha. But then you get to Reb Tzvi Yehuda, he says it's the family, it's the nation. Because there was no, the nation was, you couldn't see it anymore. It was just a theory in Reb Tzadok's time. It became reality in our time. So that's the Yaakov Avinu. So he says it's the group.
Yeah, like 10 minutes.
Yeah, good, thanks. Okay, so let me just, I'm going to read to you from the Chumash about where Yehuda sees this. So right here, it's in the dream of the ladder. So Yaakov Meir had this dream of the ladder. So Yehuda says this was a high point in Jewish history, one of the biggest high points in Jewish history. He says the two ones from the Avos, the two biggest high points were when Hashem said to Avram Avinu, "Lech lecha me'artzecha, go out of your land to the place I'll show you." That was a major revolutionary turning point that the Jewish nation had. Was the idea of it was brought down, and Avram was told to start forming the nation. And then the second high point was this series of this experience of the dream of the ladder and the angels on the ladder. So this was a very big, also revolutionary event. That's what he says. Very interesting. Yitzchak and Mitum, sort of things went underground. He was at the channel from Aharon to Yakov. So what's this story? So the story's like this.
So is this getting back to what you were saying earlier? Is this essentially the pattern of Avraham repeating that his son was as an equivalent moment in his life?
What I'm trying to say is that this Yakov is a grandson, right?
Oh, yeah,
So-
grandson. But
so-
you're saying about the family,
I'm saying like this,
repeating in the family. So,
I'm saying that this is the bringing out of the set of three, right?
right.
So the first set is Avram Avinu like seeing Hashem, and recognizing Hashem as what everything's all about, and setting off towards to make a nation. And then the nation in that time is just an idea, and we're still dealing with individuals, And then as it goes through Yitzchak, then we get to Avram Avinu, get to Yaakov Avinu. Now we have a turning point that the nation starts to form. And he says that happened at this dream of the ladder. It says like this: Avinu went out of Beersheba, and he arrived at Bamakom. He arrived at the place. He arrived at a certain significant place, and he slept there. He took the rocks, put them under his head, and v'yachalom, and he had a dream. And behold, there was a ladder, and it was coming down to the land, to the Aretz. This ladder was coming down, was starting in the heavens, came down to the land, and he saw angels going up and down on the ladder. And Hashem was on top of it. That's the dream. And Yaakov Avinu wakes up. Oh, and I'm sorry, in the dream, so then Hashem says to Yaakov, he says, the land which you're lying on, I'm going to give you this land, and your children will spread out throughout the land, and they will bless through you all the families of the earth. And I'll bring you, etc. So he was on his way. So the point is like this: Yaakov Avinu was on his way to the house of Lavan. He was going about to make a family, going to get married, and on the way he had this dream. And Hashem was telling him, "There's going to be a Jewish nation. You're going to make the Jewish nation, and all the world is going to be blessed through this Jewish nation, and on this land in Eretz Yisrael." And then he woke up and he said, "How lofty, how fearsome is this place?" So Yaakov Avinu realized that he was sleeping in an unusual place. Turns out he's sleeping in the place of the Beis HaMikdash. And as a result, he had this dream which you wouldn't have in another place. There was something about the Beis HaMikdash place which was an amazing thing. That even though Hashem doesn't have a body, doesn't have any limitations, he also created certain places which are special in this world. This is the first time you see that in Chumash. He was in the place of the base of Mikdash. And there you have this expanded awareness. And so Yaakov came out and he started seeing things as a nation. There was this transformation from the individual to the nation at this time, as he was going to make a family. So this family, his family is going to be the family that was going to be the perfect family, the 12 tribes, all of them holy and basically perfect. Even though you see all the things they went through, that's what came out. And out of that came all the Jewish nation. So this was a preparation, the transfer from the individual to the nation. He says, Rabbi Yehuda says that after he woke up, he took the stone. It says the pasuk, he took the stone, and he said, "I'm going to make this into this will be a matzeva. Matzeva is an altar made of one stone. So I'm going to take this altar, and this altar will become. I'm going to make a sacrifice on it." Yaakov said, "But this altar will become the house of Hashem." So it starts out an altar, and at the end it's going to be a house. It's going to be the base of Mikdash, and he calls it a house. So the significance is that there was a transferring at this point of the individual. When they had these matzevas, these single stones, they used to go around them. Each individual would serve Hashem on that stone. He would bring the korbanos over there, and what they do over there. Now, Yaakov is saying this individual service is going to become a group service. It's going to be something else. It's going to be people coming together and serving Hashem as family and as a group. And that's the base of Mikdash represents that. And also all the idea of a house, a home and a house represents that. So starting with Yaakov is the ultimate family. So it's interesting. So going back to my question before, you have a Rebbe and you have a student. They have this highest relationship, bringing out wisdom. And what's higher than that? The answer is a house, a Jewish family, higher than even studying in a certain sense, because it brings them into the family, into the group level. This holiness, that's the highest thing, is the Jewish family. Mm-hmm. That starts with Yaakov in its full sense, and then out of the Jewish family you have a Jewish nation, and so that's the highest thing. That's the main idea I wanted to bring down here. There is another big idea which would take me another long time to talk out, but he says another thing. So this is really interesting also. Another thing about Yaakov and who he was that we have to learn from. He says also came with Yaakov not only did he come the sense of group, the identity of the Jewish people, also came with a lot of troubles. Sibuchim, he calls it, complications. Avram Avinu had tests, but he passed them with flying colors. Yitzchak was just a natural superstar. Everything worked out for him.
And then what about Yakov?
So Yakov, he had constant troubles. Things never went smoothly for Yakov. There was always opposition. There was always complexities, tragedies, all kinds of strange, difficulty things, and he never got free of them, except at the very end of his life. But the Yehuda says that's part of the quality of Yaakov Avinu, that he had constant troubles. Mm-hmm. And it's really interesting, because you would think that means he's lower than the other ones, and the answer is that means he's higher, because when you have this group, which are a very high level, this group identity and this group holiness, so then they keep getting purified and refined through all the troubles. And that's what happened to Yaakov Avinu. He was that mini Klal Yisrael, getting a bunch of troubles, opposition, and that's the way it has to be. That for the group to go from its greatness to its perfection has to have all kinds of things it goes through, and it weathers them. And it's not like just simple test, you pass the test. It's constant complexities, which there's no simple solution to, but you deal with them with faith and perseverance. Now you look into the future, you look at the Jewish people, and you see all the complexities, all the difficulties that we've had since we were founded as a nation, in everywhere, within Eretz Yisrael, all the nations battling us, all the different troubles, all the ups and downs of the nation, and then we got sent into Galut. Like, you would think that means the end of us, and that's what the Christians thought. Oh, that's the end of the Jews. Now we'll replace them. It turned out, no, that wasn't the end of us. That was part of the process of our greatness. But because we were great, we were going to be tested a lot, go through a lot of stuff. So we went into the Gullus, and then Christians said, oh, you see, that they were rejected. And guess what happened? We came back. They're in shock.
What really shocked them was 1967 when Jerusalem was reunified.
Came back a second time, even more. We keep coming back. So what that means is that people think, so I want to say this is a very interesting thing. And Yaakov Avinu was a precedent for this. Yaakov Avinu had a lot of troubles. But he represented the whole nation. That nation afterwards had a lot of troubles also. Why? Is that because there's something wrong with us? Because we're nebachim, because we are weak? No, it's because we're great. That's the greatness. The great people, they have to go through a lot of things in order to become like eternal. Like nothing can stop them. To bring out their eternalness and to bring out their perfection. So the other nation is saying, yeah, you guys are just like, you're galut people. We kick you around. All of a sudden, we said, no, that's not what's going on the whole time. We were just warming up, guys. And now here we are. Here we are. We're this nation that was the plan. We were the ones that are the highest nation, the ones that are carrying the divine mission, and that's why we had all these troubles. Not the other way around. And it applies to an individual also, by the way. You should guys know that. And this I just want to point like an individual lesson here, that people go through a lot of troubles and a lot of ups and downs. And if they don't have the right view, they think that means that I'm somehow something's wrong with me, something's wrong with my situation, something's wrong with people around me. All these troubles I'm having, that means that I'm not succeeding. And it's the opposite. It means that you are succeeding. When you're talking about the Jewish people in particular, it means you're getting all these troubles because Hashem wants to bring you up and up and up. He wants you to be resilient. He wants to just work through those and become more big and go out of yourself and become someone that can actually do for the whole world, do for others and do for Hashem, do for the whole world. You get that only through complications. So that's Yaakov Avinu was also that. So that's an amazing thing. And just in conclusion here, so that's the main things I wanted to say today. It's interesting. You find people that that things they don't have so much troubles. You be jealous of them. You'd say, "Oh, look at that guy. How could you ask me about that? Things go well for them. They get very wealthy. They get successful. They're popular." You say, "Oh, that guy's successful, and me, I have all these problems, and I don't look successful and this and that." But it's many times the opposite. It's the shallow guy that things might go more smooth for him, and the reason for that is he says this, Rabbi Yehuda, he says that we have a body and a soul. The body and the soul don't come together naturally. That's a fit, which is supernatural. And when the soul wants to express itself, and the body gets in the way, and the physical world and the illusions of the world get in the way. So therefore, that's where the complexities come from. The soul is finding itself. Things really work from within. And what comes our way is because the soul has been to go through different processes until it finds itself and unifies with its body and unifies with the reality of the world. So that process is difficult. And there's ups and downs. But someone who goes, things are smooth for them, that means their soul is totally so submerged, many times, so submerged that they're just this worldly people, and they're not getting much. They're not succeeding really. They look like success. That's not success. The successful person is going to go through a lot. Okay, we'll stop here. Good.
Thank you.